accept my ex as part of our lives, or the wedding is off.
Accept my ex as part of our lives, or the wedding is off. Those words hung in the air of that Manhattan penthouse like a verdict. Winona Prescott stood frozen, staring at the man she'd agreed to marry, Billionaire, Dex Holloway, watching his jaw set in that stubborn way she'd mistaken for strength. The 4-carat engagement ring on her finger suddenly felt heavy. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered with 1,000 promises, but inside that luxury apartment, something had shattered. Have you ever been in a relationship where you had to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations? Where you compromised so much, your boundaries, your peace, your very identity, that you almost forgot who you were? Have you ever looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back? Welcome to Mr. Roman's Story Vault. Whether you're returning or discovering us for the first time, I'm so glad you're here. This is the story of a woman who stood at the crossroads between a billion-dollar lifestyle and her self-respect. Between the fairy tale everyone told her she should want, and the truth her soul was screaming. If you love stories about women who refuse to settle, about courage that looks like a quiet okay, about transformation that begins the moment you choose yourself, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss these powerful journeys. Trust me, you'll want to be here for every story we share. Winona Prescott had never imagined her life would include the phrase billionaire fiancé. She'd grown up in northeast Portland, where her father ran a barbershop that doubled as a community gathering place, and her mother worked as a social worker serving their neighborhood. Winona had built her graphic design business from her childhood bedroom, surviving on 16-hour days, her grandmother's prayers, and pure determination. She'd never needed luxury, but she thought she'd found love. Now, standing in that penthouse with its cold marble countertops and air that smelled like expensive cologne and fresh lilies, she realized some prices were too high, regardless of the zeros attached. Dex's voice softened, employing that smooth tone that had first made her fall for him 9 months ago at a charity gala. "Win, baby, you're being unreasonable. Margot is my business partner now. This is a billion-dollar deal. She's going to be around. You need to accept that." Margot, his ex-girlfriend of 6 years, the woman he'd almost married before Winona, the woman who apparently now had keys to his apartment, their apartment. He'd corrected her earlier, but it had never felt like hers. "So, what are you saying exactly?" Winona asked, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. Dex's eyes flashed with something that might have been relief that she was finally being reasonable. "I'm saying Margot is part of my life now, professionally. She'll be at the wedding. She'll be at company events. You two need to find a way to get along. And if I can't..." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Dex's expression hardened, transforming into the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire before 35. "Then maybe we need to reconsider the wedding. I won't live my life walking on eggshells, constantly managing your insecurities." There it was, the ultimatum delivered like a business proposal. What Winona did next shocked everyone. Dex, his family, his social circle, maybe even herself. But before we get to that moment, you need to understand how she got here. You need to know who Winona Prescott really was, beneath the designer clothes and charity gala appearances. You need to hear about the grandmother whose voice would guide her through the darkness, the compromises that had slowly eroded her spirit, and the strength she didn't even know she possessed. Because this isn't just a story about walking away, it's about walking home to yourself. To understand the woman who would eventually stand up to a billionaire, you have to go back to northeast Portland, to a corner barber shop with red and white stripes on the pole, and the smell of aftershave mixing with fresh-cut hair. Prescott's barbershop had been a fixture on Alberta Street for 32 years. Winona's father, Marcus Prescott, had opened it when he was 23 with a loan from his own father and a prayer. By the time Winona was old enough to remember, that shop was more than a business. It was the heartbeat of their community. Saturday mornings, Winona would sit on the bench by the window, legs swinging, because her feet didn't touch the ground yet, watching her father work. He had a way with people. He'd drape the cape around a customer's shoulders, and somehow within minutes, That person would be talking about things they probably hadn't told anyone else. Job losses, marriage troubles, dreams they were afraid to chase. Her father would listen, his clippers moving in steady rhythm, and he'd offer wisdom that seemed simple but landed deep. Man's got to look good to feel good, he'd say. But feeling good starts from the inside. The haircut just helps you remember who you are. Winona learned early that community wasn't just a word. It was Mr. Jenkins getting his Friday cut even though he'd lost his job. And her father, waving away payment with a get me next time that they both knew might never come. It was teenage boys learning to tie ties before prom. Older men playing dominoes. In the back while waiting their turn, everybody looking out for everybody else. Her mother, Diane, worked as a social worker for Multnomah County. She'd come home exhausted, her shoulders carrying the weight of families. In crisis, children in need, systems that moved too slowly. But she never stopped. At dinner, she'd tell stories about the people she'd helped that day. The single mother, who finally got housing, the kid who made it to graduation against all odds. This work matters, baby girl, she'd tell Winona. When you find work that matters, when you're helping people, making a real difference, that's not just a job, that's a calling. Sunday dinners at Grandma Lorraine's house were sacred. The whole family would gather around her dining table, the one that had belonged to Winona's great-grandmother. Scarred with decades of use but sturdy as ever, Grandma Lorraine would make her famous pot roast, greens cooked with ham hocks, cornbread that melted in your mouth, and peach cobbler that tasted like summer itself. Before anyone could touch a plate, Grandma Lorraine would say grace. Not the quick, perfunctory kind, the real kind, where she'd thank God for specific blessings, pray over specific struggles, and remind them all that they came from people who'd survived impossible things. "We're Prescott women," she'd tell Winona, catching her granddaughter's eye across the table. "We come from a long line of black women who made miracles happen with empty pockets and full hearts. Your great-great-grandmother raised 5 children alone after her husband died in the mill. Your great-grandmother integrated the nursing program at the hospital when folks told her she didn't belong. Your grandmother, me, put myself through college working 3 jobs." She'd pause, letting that history settle over the room like a blessing. So don't ever let anyone make you feel like you're supposed to be grateful for the bare minimum. Don't ever shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. You hear me? "Yes, Mom," Winona would answer. "You're a Prescott woman. We don't beg for respect, we command it." Those words became Winona's foundation. She applied that work ethic to everything. In high school, she discovered graphic design, the way colors and shapes could tell stories, the way a good logo could capture the essence of something bigger. She taught herself Adobe Creative Suite from YouTube tutorials, practicing for hours in her bedroom, until her mother would knock on the door at 2 in the morning, telling her to get some sleep. By the time she graduated from Portland State University with a degree in visual communications, Winona had already landed her first 3 clients. Small businesses, mostly, black-owned shops and community organizations that couldn't afford big agency prices but needed professional branding. She worked from her childhood bedroom, which she'd converted into a makeshift office. Her father built her a desk from reclaimed wood. Her mother gifted her a second-hand Herman Miller chair from an office that was remodeling. Grandma Lorraine contributed a lamp and the same advice she always gave: do good work, treat people right, and trust your gut. For 3 years, Winona built her business, Prescott Creative Studios, 1 client at a time. She designed the logo for the new community center on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. She created the branding for a black-owned coffee roastery that went on to open 5 locations. She did the website for a non-profit that helped formerly incarcerated people find employment. The money wasn't extravagant, but it was honest. More importantly, the work mattered. She was using her gifts to serve her community, to help people who looked like her, who understood where she came from. Her values were clear: hard work, community, authenticity. She showed up as herself: natural curls, thrift store blazers mixed with vintage finds. Her mother's wisdom and her grandmother's backbone running through her veins. Winona Prescott knew who she was. At least, she did before she met Dex Holloway. 9 months before the ultimatum, Winona almost didn't attend the charity gala. Her college friend Jasmine had invited her to the Future Forward Foundation fundraiser at the Portland Art Museum. The ticket price was $200, money Winona would rather have donated directly to a cause than spent on salmon and speeches. But Jasmine insisted. "You need to network," Jasmine said over the phone. "Not everyone can afford your services. Win. If you want to grow your business, you need to meet people who can actually pay you what you're worth." Winona had reluctantly agreed. She wore a black dress she'd found at a consignment shop, simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Her natural curls were swept into an updo. Her only jewelry was her grandmother's gold hoops and a bracelet her mother had given her for graduation. She looked beautiful, though she felt slightly out of place among the floor-length gowns and tuxedos. The museum's grand hall had been transformed. White-clothed tables surrounded a dance floor. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that were more art than food. Winona found Jasmine near the bar, and they settled into conversation, people watching and laughing quietly at the performative philanthropy. On display, wealthy people congratulating themselves for writing checks while wearing watches that cost more than annual salaries. That's when she saw him. Dex Holloway commanded attention without trying. He stood near the auction table, tall and perfectly tailored in a navy suit that probably cost more than Winona's car. His dark hair was styled just carelessly enough to look effortless. When he laughed at something a woman said, his whole face transformed. Genuinely warm, not the practiced smile of someone working a room. "That's Dex Holloway," Jasmine whispered. "Tech billionaire. Started a data analytics company in his 20s, sold it for something crazy, then started investing in other companies. Everything he touches turns to gold, apparently." "Good for him," Winona said, looking away. She had no interest in tech billionaires, except somehow, an hour later, she ended up talking to one. Winona had stepped out onto the museum's terrace for air. The May evening was cool, the city lights stretching out below. She was leaning against the railing, enjoying the quiet, when a voice beside her said, "Hiding too." She turned. Dex Holloway stood a few feet away, champagne glass in hand, his tie slightly loosened. "Not hiding," Winona replied. "Just taking a break from people talking about their vacation homes." He laughed, that genuine laugh she'd noticed earlier. "Fair. I've heard about 7 different timeshares in Cabo in the last 20 minutes. Only 7? You got off easy." They fell into conversation easily. He asked what brought her to the gala, and she explained her friend's insistence on networking. When he asked what she did, she told him about Prescott Creative Studios, her focus on community-oriented businesses, the satisfaction of helping organizations that were actually making a difference. His eyes lit up. "That's incredible. Most designers I meet just want to work for big corporations or startups with venture capital. You're choosing purpose over profit." "I'm choosing both," Winona corrected gently. "Purpose doesn't mean poverty. I get paid fairly for good work. I just care about where my work goes. I respect that." He extended his hand. Dex Holloway, Winona Prescott. His handshake was firm, warm. When he smiled at her, she felt something flutter in her chest, a feeling she immediately distrusted. They talked for another 30 minutes. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, seemed genuinely interested in her process. He told her about his own journey, building his first company from a 1-bedroom apartment, the terror and exhilaration of that first major investment, his focus now on scaling businesses that could employ hundreds of people. "I'm not saving the world," he admitted, "but I like to think I'm creating opportunities." When they returned inside, Dex asked if he could call her sometime. Winona surprised herself by saying yes. Their first date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District. Dex showed up with flowers, peonies, which happened to be her favorite, though she hadn't told him that. "Lucky guess," he said with that smile. He was charming, attentive. He listened when she talked and asked follow-up questions that showed he'd actually heard her. When she mentioned loving bookstores, Their second date was browsing Powell's City of Books for 3 hours, leaving with bags full of novels and poetry collections he insisted on buying. The romance moved quickly. Within weeks, they were seeing each other constantly. Dex flew her to San Francisco for a weekend, where they ate dim sum in Chinatown and walked across the Golden Gate Bridge. He sent her texts that made her smile, quotes from the poetry books they had bought, photos of sunrises with captions like, "Thought of you." For Winona, who dated sparingly and never seriously, this felt like something out of a movie. Dex was successful, yes, but he was also thoughtful. Funny, he seemed to genuinely care about her opinions, her dreams, her world. When he met her parents after 2 months of dating, he charmed them too. He sat in her father's barbershop, getting a cut even though he had a regular barber, asking Marcus about the neighborhood's history. He complimented Diane's work, asked intelligent questions about the challenges in social services. "He's smooth," her father said later, which could have been a compliment or a warning. Winona chose to hear it as the former. At Grandma Lorraine's Sunday dinner, Dex helped clear plates without being asked, complimented the food genuinely, and listened respectfully when Winona's grandmother told stories about the family's history. But Winona noticed her grandmother watching him with sharp eyes, the kind that had seen through people for 83 years. "You happy, baby girl?" Grandma Lorraine asked when she caught Winona alone in the kitchen. "I am," Winona said. "Really happy." Her grandmother nodded slowly. "Good. Just remember, a man should add to who you are, not change who you are. You hear the difference?" "I hear it." But in the rush of new love, Winona didn't fully listen. 5 months after that first conversation on the museum terrace, Dex proposed. They were in Cannon Beach for the weekend, watching the sunset at Haystack Rock. The Oregon coast stretched wild and beautiful, waves crashing against ancient stone. Dex got down on one knee right there in the sand, holding a ring that caught the dying light. "Winona Prescott, you're the most authentic person I've ever met. You challenge me, inspire me, make me want to be better. I love you. Will you marry me?" She'd felt a small hesitation, a whisper of doubt. They'd only known each other 5 months. She'd never even been to his place in New York, where he spent half his time. There was still so much to learn about each other, but he was looking at her with such hope, such certainty. And she did love him. She believed in them, in the possibility of building something beautiful together. "Yes," she said. The ring slid onto her finger. Dex kissed her as the sun melted into the Pacific. In that moment, it felt perfect. She didn't know that perfection was about to cost her everything she'd built, everything she was. The compromises started small. "I need you in New York," Dex said, 2 weeks after the proposal. They were at his Portland penthouse, a space Winona had never felt comfortable in, all glass and steel and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than a home. She was curled on his couch with her laptop, working on a logo for a youth mentorship program. He'd just gotten off a video call with his executive team. "For how long?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. "Permanently. Well, mostly. We can keep the Portland place, come back when we want. But my primary residence is Manhattan. After we're married, that's where we'll be." Winona's fingers paused on the keyboard. "We haven't talked about this. I thought it was obvious." He sat beside her, taking her hand. "Win, my business is in New York. My whole operation is there. I can't run it remotely. My business is here. My clients, my community. Your business is graphic design. You can do that from anywhere." He said it casually, like it was simple math. "It's not just graphic design, Dex. It's relationships. It's being embedded in the community I serve. It's knowing the neighborhoods, the culture, the specific needs. And you'll build that in New York. There are black communities in Brooklyn, Harlem, Queens. You'll find your people, her people." As if community was interchangeable, as if roots could be replanted overnight. But Dex was smiling at her with such confidence, such certainty that this would work. And she thought about married couples she knew. Somebody always moved, somebody always adjusted. That was part of partnership, right? "Okay," she'd said. "We'll figure it out." The move happened quickly. Dex hired movers to pack her entire apartment. She said goodbye to her childhood bedroom, to her parents' worried faces, to her grandmother's tight embrace. "You call me if you need anything," Grandma Lorraine whispered. "Day or night. You hear me? If something doesn't feel right, you call." "I will," Winona promised. Manhattan hit her like a wall of sound and motion. Beautiful, yes. The architecture, the energy, the sense of being at the center of everything. But also overwhelming, isolating in a way Portland had never been. Dex's penthouse became their penthouse, though Winona struggled to think of it that way. Her furniture didn't fit the aesthetic. Her books looked cluttered on his minimalist shelves. Even her clothes seemed too colorful, too casual, hanging in the closet next to his tailored suits and designer labels. She tried to rebuild her client base, but it was different here. The black-owned businesses she reached out to already had designers, or they couldn't afford. Her rates, which suddenly seemed too low compared to what New York agencies charged. She felt caught between two worlds. Not expensive enough for Manhattan, is elite, too expensive for the communities she wanted to serve. Her work slowed. For the first time in years, Winona had empty days. "Why don't you come to events with me?" Dex suggested. "Network. Meet people who could become clients." So she did. The first dinner with Dex's family should have been a warning. His parents lived in Connecticut, old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. The house was exactly what Winona expected: colonial architecture, manicured, lawns, interior design that looked like a Ralph Lauren catalog. Dex's mother, Catherine Holloway, greeted them at the door with air kisses that didn't quite touch skin. She was blonde, thin, dressed in cream-colored cashmere that probably cost more than Winona's monthly rent back in Portland. "So lovely to finally meet you," Catherine said, her eyes scanning Winona head to toe. "Dex has told us so much. And your hair, it's so exotic." Winona had worn her natural curls. She felt her smile tighten. "Thank you." At dinner, Dex's father, Richard, a hedge fund manager, asked polite questions about her background. When she mentioned her father's barbershop, she saw something flicker in his expression. Not quite disdain, but definitely not respect. "How quaint," Catherine said. "Small business is the backbone of America." The condescension was wrapped in politeness, but it landed nonetheless. Dex's younger sister Bethany was kinder. She asked about Winona's design work, seemed genuinely interested. But then Catherine interrupted. "Graphic design. That's wonderful, dear. Though I suppose you'll be quite busy once you're married. Dex needs a partner who can manage his social obligations. So many events, so many responsibilities." "I plan to keep working," Winona said firmly. Of course. As a hobby. Winona's entire career, her passion, her purpose, dismissed as a hobby. Dex squeezed her hand under the table. Later, he'd say his mother didn't mean it that way, that she came from a different generation, that Winona was being sensitive. That word, sensitive, would come up a lot. The worst moment came when Dex's uncle, Harold, arrived for after-dinner drinks. He'd had several bourbons when he turned to Winona with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're a lucky woman," he said loudly, landing a Holloway. Smart move, landing. Like Dex was a prize she'd hunted. Like she hadn't built her own successful business, hadn't earned her own accomplishments. "I think we're both lucky," Winona replied, keeping her voice level. Sure, but let's be honest. You're moving up in the world, right? From Portland to Manhattan, from a barbershop to all this." He gestured around the room. "That's the American dream right there." The implication was clear. She was beneath them, and she should be grateful they were letting her in. Dex laughed uncomfortably, but didn't correct his uncle, didn't defend her, just changed the subject. On the drive back to Manhattan, Winona was quiet. "My uncle was drunk," Dex said. "Don't take it personally. How else should I take it? He's from a different time. He doesn't mean anything by it. But he did mean something. They all did." The pattern continued. At a charity gala, another one because apparently Dex's social calendar was endless galas, a woman touched Winona's hair without asking, just reached out and put her hands in Winona's curls, like she was petting an animal. "I've always wanted to know what this feels like," the woman gushed. "It's so different." Winona stepped back, forcing a smile. "Please don't touch my hair." "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just think it's so beautiful. So ethnic." Later, when Winona told Dex she'd felt violated, he sighed. "She meant it as a compliment, Win. You're taking it the wrong way." Another time, Winona straightened her hair for an event. Catherine Holloway immediately commented, "Oh, this is so much more professional. You should wear it like this more often." Damned if she did, damned if she didn't. Slowly, Winona started shrinking her business to fit Dex's schedule. She turned down projects because they conflicted with his events. She rescheduled client calls because he needed her to attend a dinner. She stopped taking on new work because keeping up with his life left her exhausted. All relationships require compromise, she told herself. But compromise was supposed to go both ways. Dex never adjusted his schedule for her, never attended events in the black community she was trying to build connections with, never suggested they spend holidays with her family instead of his. The red flags piled up like autumn leaves, beautiful in their own way but signaling something dying. When Winona mentioned feeling isolated, Dex bought her expensive jewelry. When she said she missed her family, he paid for them to visit, and then scheduled work calls during their entire stay. When she expressed concern that she was losing herself, he told her she was overthinking. "You're just adjusting," he'd say. "It takes time. You'll find your rhythm." But Winona was starting to realize she wasn't finding her rhythm. She was learning his steps, dancing to his music, moving in patterns he'd choreographed. And she was doing it all with a smile, because she loved him, because she believed in them, because she thought this was what partnership looked like. She didn't yet understand that partnership shouldn't require you to disappear. That realization was coming, though. It was building with each dismissal, each microaggression, each moment she swallowed her discomfort to keep the peace. It would finally arrive the day Dex mentioned, casually over breakfast, that his ex-girlfriend was becoming his new business partner. The day everything would change. The name came up over breakfast on a Tuesday morning in February, 7 months after Winona had moved to New York. Dex was scrolling through his phone, coffee in hand, still wearing his workout clothes from his morning gym session. Winona sat across from him at the kitchen island, working on a mood board for one of her few remaining clients. "By the way," he said, not looking up from his screen, "I'm bringing on a new business partner for the tech merger. You'll probably meet her at some point." "That's great," Winona replied absently, adjusting the color palette on her laptop. "What's their background?" "She's brilliant. 6 years of venture capital experience, connections at every major firm on the East Coast. We dated a while back, but that's ancient history. This is purely professional." Winona's fingers stopped moving across the trackpad. "You dated her? Years ago, before you..." He finally looked up, his expression casual. "Margot Whitfield. She's exactly what we need for this deal." Margot. The name landed heavy in Winona's stomach, though she couldn't say why. Dex had mentioned past relationships before, vague references, no details. She'd never pushed because her own dating history was minimal, and she figured the past was the past. But something about the way he said it, so deliberately casual, made her internal alarm system start humming. "How long did you date?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Does it matter?" He stood, rinsing his coffee cup. "It was over long before I met you. She's a business asset now. That's all. That's all." 2 words designed to close a conversation Winona suddenly wanted to open. Over the next few days, she found herself doing something she'd never done before: research. Margot Whitfield had an impressive digital footprint, LinkedIn profile detailing her venture capital career, features in business magazines, photos from industry events where she stood poised and confident in designer suits, her blonde hair always perfectly styled. But it was the older photos Winona found on a society blog that made her breath catch. Dex and Margot at a gala 5 years ago. Dex and Margot at a charity polo match. Dex and Margot looking very much like a couple, at what the caption described as the social event of the season. 6 years. They'd been together 6 years. Winona kept digging, hating herself for it but unable to stop. A gossip column from 3 years ago mentioned Dex Holloway's longtime girlfriend Margot Whitfield and speculation about an engagement. Another article showed them at a New Year's Eve party, Margot's hand on Dex's chest, both of them laughing like they shared secrets the rest of the world would never know. This wasn't some casual relationship. This was serious. This was a woman who'd been woven into Dex's life for longer than Winona had known him. When Dex came home that evening, Winona was waiting. 6 years? She said without preamble. He set down his briefcase, his expression flickering with annoyance. You looked her up. You said you dated. You didn't mention it was 6 years. You didn't mention people thought you were going to marry her. Key word, thought. We didn't get married. It didn't work out. I'm with you now. And now she's your business partner. Yes, because she's the best person for the job. His voice had an edge now. Win. I don't understand why this is a problem. My past is my past. Are you really going to be one of those women who can't handle their partner having history? One of those women. The phrase was designed to make her feel irrational, jealous, small. I just think it's something we should have discussed more thoroughly, Winona said carefully, before you made the decision to work closely with someone you were serious with for 6 years. I'm a businessman. I make business decisions based on what's best for the company, not based on managing my fiancé's insecurities. Insecurities. There was that word again. The conversation ended there, but the discomfort didn't. Margot started appearing in Dex's life like morning fog, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Phone calls during dinner, text messages at 10 p.m. about urgent matters, meetings that ran until midnight. How was work? Winona would ask when Dex finally came home. Productive. Margot's insights are invaluable. This merger is going to be massive. Margot's insights, Margot's connections, Margot's brilliance. 3 weeks after she'd been hired, Winona came home from a rare coffee, meeting with a potential client to find Margot in the penthouse. She was standing in the kitchen, Winona's kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine from the bottle Winona and Dex had opened 2 nights ago. She looked up when Winona entered, completely unfazed. Oh, hi, you must be Winona. Margot's smile was friendly, practiced. I'm Margot. Dex had to take a call, so he told me to make myself comfortable. How did you get in? Winona asked, her voice calmer than her racing pulse. Margot held up a key. Dex gave me one. Makes it easier for when we're working late and need to grab files or when he's running behind. A key to their apartment. Winona felt something cold settle in her chest. She set down her bag slowly, deliberately, buying time to control her expression. That's convenient, she managed. Right? Honestly, these merger negotiations are insane. We've been basically living at the office. Or here. Dex said you wouldn't mind. Dex said, not we discussed it. Not is that okay with you? Just Dex said, as if Winona's opinion on who had access to her home was irrelevant. When Dex emerged from his office 20 minutes later, Margot was telling a story about a deal they'd closed together years ago, laughing at shared memories Winona had no part in. Dex was laughing too, relaxed in a way Winona rarely saw anymore. They looked natural together, comfortable, like two people who'd spent years learning each other's rhythms. After Margot left, Winona confronted him. You gave her a key? Without asking me? It's practical, Win. We're working around the clock on this deal. She could have waited in the lobby. She could have gone to a coffee shop. She doesn't need a key to our home. It's my home. I pay the mortgage, and she's my business partner. I need to make decisions that facilitate my work. My home. Not our home. The words cut clean. This isn't about the key, Winona said, her voice shaking now. This is about you making decisions that affect both of us without including me. This is about you bringing your ex-girlfriend into our lives without any boundaries. Here we go. Dex ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. I knew you'd blow this out of proportion. Margot is not my girlfriend. She's my colleague. You're being paranoid. But Winona's gut was screaming now. Not the quiet hum of concern, a full siren wail. Her body knew what her mind was still trying to rationalize. Tension headaches that appeared every time Dex mentioned Margot's name. The knot in her stomach when she heard his key in the lock late at night. The way her hands trembled when she saw Margot's name on his phone screen. She called Jasmine, needing validation, needing someone to tell her she wasn't losing her mind. "He gave his ex-girlfriend a key to your apartment?" Jasmine said, her voice rising. "Girl, no. That's not okay, but they are working together. Maybe I am overreacting. Win, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for behavior you know is wrong. Trust your gut." But when she mentioned it to another friend, someone from Dex's social circle, the response was different. Dex is a professional. If he says it's just business, it's just business. You can't be the jealous fiancé. That's not a good look. Not a good look. As if her legitimate concerns were a fashion mistake. The gaslighting was working. Winona started doubting herself, questioning whether her instincts were reliable, or if she was being paranoid, possessive, problematic. Until the night she found them together. Not physically, nothing that dramatic. But she came home early from a cancelled meeting to find Dex and Margot on the couch, laptops open, sitting close. Too close. Margot's hand was on Dex's arm as she leaned in to point at something on the screen, her voice low and intimate. They looked up when Winona entered, and for just a fraction of a second, she saw something flash across Dex's face. Guilt? Annoyance at the interruption? "Hey babe," he said quickly. "Didn't expect you back so soon." Margot stood smoothly, gathering her things. "I should go anyway. We can finish this tomorrow." After she left, Winona stood in the middle of the living room, her body finally syncing with her mind. The physical sensations, the racing heart, the tight chest, the trembling hands weren't anxiety. They were truth, trying to break through denial. "We need to talk about boundaries," she said. "Not this again." Dex's voice was tired, dismissive. "Yes, this again. Because nothing has changed. She's still here constantly. She still has a key. You're still prioritizing her comfort over my feelings. I'm prioritizing my business. At what cost?" That's when everything came to a head. They stand in the penthouse kitchen, the city lights glittering behind them like an audience to their unraveling. Winona's grip tightens on the marble countertop, her brown skin contrasting against the cold white stone. Every muscle in her body is tense, preparing for impact. "You're being unreasonable," Dex says, running his fingers through his dark hair in that gesture she once found endearing and now recognizes as frustration with her existence. "Margot is my business partner now. She's going to be around. You need to accept that." Her voice comes out steadier than she feels. "You didn't mention that your new business partner was also the woman you were with for 6 years. The woman you almost married before me. That's in the past. Then why does she have keys to this apartment?" The silence stretches between them, filled with everything he won't say. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan pulses with light and life, indifferent to the relationship crumbling in this expensive box in the sky. Dex shifts tactics, his voice softening into that smooth tone that used to make her melt. Now it just makes her tired. "Win, baby, you're overthinking this. Margot and I are ancient history, but she has connections I need for the tech merger. This is a billion-dollar deal. A billion-dollar deal." He says it like it's supposed to mean something to her, like she's supposed to bow before the altar of his ambition. "And what am I supposed to do?" Winona asks. "Smile and play nice while your ex-girlfriend sits in on your meetings, stays late, at your office, and apparently lets herself into your home whenever she wants?" His jaw tightens, and she sees the shift happening, the charming veneer cracking to reveal something harder underneath. Our home. And yes, that's exactly what I expect. If you're going to be my wife, you need to understand how my world works. This is business. This is disrespect, she counters. This is you making unilateral decisions and expecting me to fall in line. I'm saying Margot is part of my life now, professionally. She'll be at the wedding. She'll be at company events. You two need to find a way to get along. I need you to accept this. The wedding, their wedding, The event she's been planning while slowly disappearing into his expectations, his world, his version of who she should be. Something inside Winona's chest cracks, not breaking yet, but fracturing. She thinks about the past 7 months, every compromise, every swallowed objection, every time she made herself smaller to fit into his life, moving across the country, abandoning her community, shrinking her business, enduring his family's microaggressions, smiling through events where she felt like an accessory rather than a partner, all because she believed in them, in him, in the possibility of love. And if I can't? The question emerges quietly, but it cuts through the room like a blade. Dex's eyes flash with something cold. This is the man who built an empire before 35, who didn't get where he is by backing down or compromising. This is the man she's been catching glimpses of but refusing to fully see. Then, maybe we need to reconsider the wedding, he says, each word deliberate. I won't live my life walking on eggshells, constantly managing your insecurities. Accept my ex as part of our lives, or the wedding is off. There it is. The ultimatum delivered like a business proposition, like he's negotiating a contract rather than destroying a relationship. Walking on eggshells, managing her insecurities, the language of gaslighting, dressed up as reasonableness. Winona's heart hammers against her ribs, adrenaline flooding her system. This is the moment, the crossroads, the test she didn't know she was taking until she arrived at it. She's supposed to crumble, to apologize, to mold herself into whatever shape he requires. She can feel the weight of expectation, his family's, society's. The voice that says billionaires don't grow on trees, that she should be grateful, that leaving means admitting failure. But another voice rises stronger, her grandmother's voice, carrying the weight of generations. Baby girl, don't ever let anyone make you feel like you're supposed to be thankful for the bare minimum. You're a Prescott woman. We don't beg for respect. She sees her future laid out in 2 paths. One where she says sorry, swallows her boundaries, accepts Margot's presence and all the disrespect it represents. A future of shrinking and accommodating until there's nothing left. Of Winona Prescott, except the shell Dex Holloway needs on his arm. The other path is unknown, terrifying. But it's hers. Okay, Winona says simply. The word drops into the space between them, like a stone into still water. Dex blinks, his expression shifting from certainty to confusion. Okay. What? Okay, the wedding is off. For 3 full seconds, he just stares at her. Color drains from his face. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. He looks like a man who's just been told the laws of physics no longer apply. Wait, what? Win, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Her voice is steady now, clearer than it's been in months. Clarity feels like cold water, shocking and necessary. You meant every word. And honestly, Dex, I needed to hear it. I needed to see this clearly. You're being dramatic. We can talk about this. We just did. Winona walks toward the bedroom they've shared, her steps measured and calm. Inside, her emotions churn like a storm, fear and grief and relief all tangled together. But outwardly, she maintains the composure her mother taught her. Never let them see you break in public. Save your tears for your own pillow. Over Margot? Seriously? Dex's voice rises, tinged with disbelief and wounded pride. You're throwing away everything we have because you're jealous? She pauses at the doorway and turns back. This is important. She needs him to hear this, even if he won't understand it. This isn't about Margot. This is about you thinking you can issue ultimatums about my boundaries. This is about you dismissing my feelings as insecurities, instead of addressing legitimate concerns. This is about me finally understanding that love shouldn't require me to diminish myself. The power in the room has shifted. She can feel it. For 7 months, Dex has held all the cards, his city, his home, his world, his rules. But now, with one word, Winona has taken back something he never had the right to. Her autonomy. Win, wait. We can figure this out. I'll talk to Margot, we'll set some boundaries. But she's already walking away, already in the bedroom pulling a suitcase from the closet. He follows her, his voice alternating between pleading and angry, trying different approaches like he's testing which key will unlock her compliance. None of them work. Because Winona isn't a lock to be picked. She's a woman who just remembered who she is. She packs methodically. Clothes, laptop, the books she brought from Portland, the framed photo of her grandmother. She leaves behind the designer dresses Dex bought her, the expensive jewelry, anything that feels like his world rather than hers. Where are you even going to go? He demands. You don't know anyone here. You don't have anywhere to stay. I'll figure it out. This is insane. You're making a huge mistake. She zips the suitcase closed and faces him. The mistake was thinking I had to accept less than I deserve. The mistake was believing that love looks like compromise in only one direction. Dex stares at her, really seeing her maybe for the first time. Not the grateful girl from Portland who stumbled into his world. Not the accommodating fiancé who rearranged her life for his convenience, but Winona Prescott, the woman who built a business from her bedroom, who comes from a line of black women who survived impossible things, who knows her worth doesn't depend on his recognition of it. You'll regret this, he says, and she can't tell if it's a prediction or a threat. Maybe, she acknowledges, but I'll regret staying more. She walks out of the bedroom past him, through the living room with its cold modern furniture and stunning views. She walks out the door of the penthouse, and the click of it closing behind her sounds like freedom. In the hallway, waiting for the elevator, Winona feels the weight of what she's just done start to settle. Terror mixes with exhilaration. She has no plan, no place to stay, no idea what comes next. But she has herself back. The elevator doors open, and she steps in. As they close, she catches her reflection in the polished metal. She looks different. Smaller without the armor of expensive clothes and perfect styling, but also more real, more herself. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever had to walk away from something that looked perfect on paper, but was slowly destroying who you are, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, what was your okay moment? When did you finally choose yourself? Your story matters, and I want to hear it. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's forgotten that they're allowed to have boundaries, that they're allowed to say no, because sometimes okay is the bravest word you'll ever speak. Sometimes walking away is how you find your way home. The hotel Winona checked into was a mid-range chain in Midtown. Nothing like the penthouse's luxury, but it had a bed and a door that locked. Most importantly, it was hers. Nobody else had a key. Nobody could walk in unannounced. The thought alone made her shoulders drop 2 inches. She set her suitcase on the luggage rack and looked around the room. Generic art on the walls, beige carpet, a desk bolted to the wall. The kind of space designed for business travelers passing through, not for women rebuilding their lives. But standing there in that ordinary room, Winona felt something she hadn't experienced in months: privacy. She sat on the edge of the bed, and that's when she noticed the ring still on her finger. 4 carats, princess cut, set in platinum. It caught the lamplight, sending fractured rainbows across the cream-colored wall. Beautiful, expensive, hollow. She twisted it slowly, feeling the weight. This ring had represented a future, a life she'd been building in her mind, even as the foundation crumbled beneath her feet. Winona slid it off and held it in her palm, lighter than she expected. Funny how something so small could carry so much meaning, so many expectations, so many compromises. She placed it on the nightstand and waited for the tears to come. They didn't. Instead, she felt relief flooding through her body like warm water. Her chest loosened. Her breathing deepened. The constant knot of anxiety that had taken up residence in her stomach began to untie itself, one loop at a time. She'd expected heartbreak to feel like drowning, but this felt like surfacing. Her phone started buzzing. She picked it up and watched notifications flood the screen. Messages from Dex, coming in rapid succession. Win, I'm sorry. Let's talk about this. You're right. I should have handled the Margot situation differently. Where are you? Come home. We can work this out. She watched 3 dots appear and disappear. Appear and disappear. He was typing, deleting, typing again, searching for the right combination of words to unlock her compliance. 5 minutes later, the tone shifted. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. But I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? You'll regret this. Nobody's going to put up with your drama like I did. There it was, the anger breaking through the performance of remorse. She watched the messages come through with detached curiosity, like she was observing a stranger's conversation. How had she ever believed this man loved her? Love doesn't threaten. Love doesn't punish. Love doesn't call your boundaries drama. 10 minutes after that, another shift. Baby, please, I love you, and I'll do anything. Just tell me what you need. We can go to couples therapy. We can set whatever boundaries you want. Don't throw away what we have. Winona turned off her phone. The silence that followed was complete. No buzzing, no notifications, no demands on her attention, her time, her emotional energy. She lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd had this. Complete quiet, nobody expecting anything from her. She got up and walked to the bathroom, flipping on the light. The mirror showed her reflection. No makeup now, her natural curls slightly flattened from the stress of the evening, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of the designer clothes Dex preferred. She looked tired, but she also looked like herself. Winona met her own eyes in the mirror and spoke out loud. You did the right thing. Her voice sounded small in the tiled space, but certain. She needed to hear it, needed to claim it before doubt could creep in. The ring sat on the nightstand, glittering with false promises. Her phone stayed dark and silent. The city hummed outside her window, indifferent to her pain and her liberation in equal measure. Winona changed into sleep clothes, climbed under the generic hotel sheets, and closed her eyes. She thought sleep would be impossible, that her mind would race with second-guessing and what-ifs. Instead, she slept for 10 hours straight, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes from finally setting down a weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. When she woke up the next morning, sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains, her first thought wasn't regret. It was, I need to call Mama. Winona sat cross-legged on the hotel bed with her coffee from the lobby, phone in hand. It was almost midnight in New York, which made it 9 p.m. in Portland. Her mother would still be up, probably reading in the living room while her father watched the news. She turned her phone back on. Immediately, more messages flooded in. Dex's continued campaign, a few from acquaintances, who'd somehow already heard, one from Jasmine with just a string of question marks. She ignored all of them and called home. Her mother answered on the second ring. Winona? Baby, it's late there. Everything okay? Just hearing her mother's voice made Winona's throat tighten. Mama, the single word, the way it cracked on the second syllable, conveyed everything. What's wrong? What happened? Is it Dex? I left him. I called off the wedding. Silence. Winona braced herself, uncertain what her mother would say. They'd invested in plane tickets for the wedding. Her parents had been excited about the match, proud of their daughter. Success, even if they'd had reservations, they hadn't fully voiced. Then her mother's voice came through, thick with emotion. Thank you, Jesus. Baby, I've been praying you'd find your way back to yourself. Winona felt tears spring to her eyes, the first one since she'd walked out. You didn't like him? I didn't like who you were becoming with him. That's different. Her mother's voice held both gentleness and firmness, the tone that had guided Winona through every crisis of her life. You're my strong, brilliant, creative daughter. And I watched you get dimmer every time we talked. Your light was going out, baby. That's not love. That's not what your grandmother and I raised you to accept. The tears came fully now, streaming down Winona's face. Not tears of sadness, but of relief, of being seen, of being understood. He gave me an ultimatum, Winona said, the words tumbling out, about his ex-girlfriend. She's his business partner now. And he said I had to accept her being in our lives constantly or the wedding was off. And what did you say? I said okay. The wedding's off. Her mother laughed, actually laughed. A sound of pure joy. That's my girl. That's my Prescott woman right there. I'm scared, Mama. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in a hotel room. I don't have a plan. Everything I built here was connected to him somehow. Then you'll build something new, something that's actually yours. Her mother's voice was steady, anchoring. You've done it before. You built a whole business from your bedroom, remember? You don't need his world, Winona. You never did. I feel like I wasted so much time. No, baby. You learned. There's a difference. You learned what you won't accept. You learned what love isn't supposed to look like. That's not wasted time. That's wisdom earned. Winona heard her father's voice in the background, asking what was happening. Her mother must have put the phone on speaker because his voice came through clear. Winona. You all right, baby girl? I am, Daddy. Good. You need me to come out there? Say the word, and I'm on the next flight. The offer made her smile through her tears. No, I'm okay. I just needed to hear your voices. You're always welcome home, her father said. Your room is exactly how you left it. You need to come back for a while, get your feet under you. That's what we're here for. They talked for another 30 minutes. Her mother told her about the neighborhood, about the new restaurant on Alberta Street, about Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter who just graduated from medical school. Normal things. Life continuing in the place where Winona's roots went deep. Your grandmother would be so proud of you, her mother said before they hung up. She always said, a black woman's backbone is made of her ancestors' strength. You showed yours tonight. After the call ended, Winona sat in the quiet hotel room, feeling more centered than she had in months. She wasn't alone in this. She carried generations of women who'd made hard choices, who'd refused to settle, who'd walked away from situations that diminished them. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. We're Prescott women. We don't beg for respect. We command it. Winona had forgotten that. But tonight, she'd remembered. She was anchored again. Within a week, Winona found a sublet in Brooklyn, a one-bedroom in bed, style that cost a fraction of what Dex's penthouse had. The landlord was a black woman in her 60s named Mrs. Chen, whose Jamaican, Chinese parents had bought the brownstone in the 70s. Month to month. Okay with you? Mrs. Chen asked during the walkthrough. I don't need a long commitment, and I figure you don't either right now. Winona looked at her, surprised. How did you know? Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly. Honey, I've been renting to women getting their lives back together for 20 years. I recognized the look. No judgment, just support. First month, last month, and you're in. The apartment was small but full of light. Hardwood floors that creaked with character. A kitchen window that overlooked a community garden. And most importantly, it was in a neighborhood that felt alive in ways Manhattan never had. There was a black-owned coffee shop on the corner, Restoration Roasters, where the barista learned her name by the third visit. Music drifted from open windows in the evening. Jazz, Afrobeats, someone practicing violin. Kids played in the street. Neighbors said hello. For the first time in 7 months, Winona felt like she could breathe. She set up her laptop at the small kitchen table and started rebuilding. Reached out to old clients, updated her portfolio, joined online communities for black women entrepreneurs. The work came slowly at first, but it came. 2 weeks after leaving Dex, a package arrived. Winona stared at the return address, Dex's penthouse, and her stomach dropped. She considered not opening it, just tossing it in the trash. But curiosity won. Inside was the engagement ring she'd left on the nightstand, nestled in its original box. Underneath was a letter, handwritten on expensive stationery. Win. I've had time to think, and I was wrong. I handled the Margot situation poorly. I let business cloud my judgment about what matters most. Us. And Margot has decided to step back from the partnership. I've told her we need clear boundaries, and she's agreed. She won't be part of our lives the way I was planning. I'm willing to make changes. Real changes. We can do couples therapy. We can spend more time in Portland if that's what you need. I'll be more considerate of your feelings and your business. Please, come home. We can work through this. What we have is too special to throw away over a misunderstanding. I love you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Dex. Winona read it twice, looking for the sincerity she wanted to find. The letter said all the right things, acknowledged fault, promised change, offered compromise. But she read between the lines, searching for what wasn't said. Margot decided to step back. Not I removed her from the partnership, as if Margot had autonomy in a decision that should have been Dex's to make. Clear boundaries, but defined by whom? Based on what standards? Couples therapy, something he'd dismissed when she'd suggested it months ago, now offered as a bargaining chip. Willing to do whatever it takes, except actually apologize for the ultimatum, for calling her insecure, for dismissing her legitimate concerns as drama. This wasn't accountability, this was strategy. A businessman making a counteroffer after losing a negotiation. Winona pulled out her phone and typed a response. She kept it simple. Dex, I appreciate you taking time to reflect. However, my decision stands. I wish you well, but we're not right for each other. I'll have a courier pick up the ring. Winona? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her phone rang within 60 seconds. Dex's name on the screen. She let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. A third time. She blocked the number. That evening, she took the ring to a jewelry store and asked for an appraisal. The jeweler confirmed what she suspected. It was worth about $30,000. Beautiful piece, he said. Selling it? Returning it, Winona replied. She arranged for a courier service to deliver it back to Dex's office. Signature required. Clean. Final. Done. Walking home from the jewelry store, Winona passed Restoration Roasters. Through the window, she could see people laughing, working on laptops, living their lives. The community garden across the street was full of people tending plots, kids running between rows of vegetables. She'd been tempted by Dex's letter. She wouldn't lie about that. The security he represented, the life that looked so good on paper. It still had pull. But paper burns, and Winona was done setting herself on fire to keep someone else warm. She was home now, not in the place, though Brooklyn was starting to feel like it could be, but home in herself. Back to the woman her grandmother raised, the woman who knew her worth didn't depend on anyone's validation. The temptation had been real, but so was her certainty. For 3 days after returning the ring, everything was quiet. Winona let herself believe it was over. Dex had gotten the message. They could both move forward. Then the flowers started arriving. The first arrangement showed up at her door on a Wednesday morning. 3 dozen white roses in a crystal vase with a card, "Are not giving up on us." Winona gave them to Mrs. Chen. Thursday brought orchids. Friday, peonies, her favorites, which felt manipulative rather than thoughtful. Each arrangement came with increasingly desperate messages. "You're making a mistake. Nobody will love you like I do. We're meant to be together." Her phone, even with his number blocked, filled with messages from email addresses she didn't recognize. Long paragraphs about their connection, their future, how much he'd changed. The tone oscillated between romantic and aggressive, loving and accusatory. Classic love. Bombing. Winona recognized it from articles she'd read, conversations with her therapist friends. When control tactics fail, flood the target with affection and attention. Make them doubt their decision. Make leaving seem harder than staying. She documented everything but didn't respond. Monday morning she had a video call scheduled with Green Community Arts Center, a non-profit in Harlem. They needed a complete rebrand and had loved her initial concepts. It was exactly the kind of meaningful work she wanted to do. 5 minutes before the call, she got an email. "We've decided to go in a different direction. Thank you for your time." Winona stared at the message, confused. The previous email from them had been enthusiastic, ready to move forward with contracts. From them had been enthusiastic, ready to move forward with contracts. Tuesday, another potential client, a black-owned bookstore in Fort Greene, cancelled their consultation. "We've decided to pause branding work for now," they said vaguely. Wednesday, a cafe owner she'd been talking to for weeks suddenly stopped responding. 3 cancellations in 3 days. Winona's instincts started humming. She called the bookstore owner back, someone she'd built a genuine rapport with. "Can I ask what changed? Last week you were excited to move forward." There was a long pause. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but someone called and said there were concerns about your reliability, that you'd recently had some personal issues that might affect your work quality." Winona's blood went cold. "Who called?" "I don't know. They said they were a former client, but the way they talked, it sounded more personal than professional. I probably shouldn't have listened, but..." The owner sighed. "I'm sorry. I should have talked to you directly. It's okay. Thank you for telling me." After hanging up, Winona sat very still, processing. Dex was sabotaging her business, using his connections, his resources, his vindictive need for control to damage her professionally. The flowers had been phase 1, win her back with romance. This was phase 2, punish her for refusing. She felt rage building, white hot and clarifying. This wasn't heartbreak, this was abuse. And she wasn't going to accept it quietly. Winona spent the next 4 hours documenting everything. Screenshots of the messages from fake email addresses, photos of the flower arrangements with their cards, the timeline of client cancellations, the bookstore owner's admission about the mysterious call. She found a lawyer, a black woman who specialized in harassment cases and came highly recommended. They met the next morning. "This is clear harassment," the lawyer said, reviewing the documentation. "And if he's interfering with your business relationships, that's tortious interference. We can send a cease and desist letter, and if he continues, pursue legal action." "How long will it take?" "The letter? I can have it delivered by tomorrow." Usually that's enough. Men like this, they're bullies. They back down when there are actual consequences. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Dex's office on Friday morning via process server. It was clear, professional, and legally binding. It demanded immediate cessation of all contact, all interference with Winona's business, all harassment of any kind. Within 24 hours, everything stopped. No more flowers, no more emails, no more mysterious calls to her clients. Complete silence. Winona stood in her Brooklyn apartment Saturday evening, looking at the lawyer. His confirmation email that the letter had been received and acknowledged. She felt something settle in her chest. Not quite satisfaction, but vindication. She'd stood up to a billionaire with lawyers and resources and connections. And she'd won. Because here's what Winona finally understood. Dex had always been a bully. The charm, the generosity, the grand gestures, they were tools of control, not love. When those tools failed, he'd shown his true nature. Manipulation, punishment, revenge. She'd seen it clearly now, and she'd stopped it. Her phone rang. Jasmine calling for their weekly check-in. "How are you doing?" Jasmine asked. "Really?" Winona looked around her small apartment. The second-hand furniture she'd collected, her design sketches tacked to the wall. The window open to Brooklyn sounds, the life she was rebuilding brick by brick. "I'm doing good," she said. "Really good." And for the first time in months, it was completely true. Winona found Dr. Patricia Okonkwo through a recommendation from Mrs. Chen, who seemed to have a network for everything a woman rebuilding her life might need. "My niece sees her," Mrs. Chen said one morning, when Winona mentioned struggling with shame about the relationship. "Nigerian woman, brilliant, specializes in trauma and relationships. But more than that, she gets it. You know what I mean?" Winona knew exactly what she meant. Dr. Okonkwo's office was in a brownstone in Clinton Hill, the waiting room, decorated with African art and shelves full of books by black authors. When the door opened and Dr. Okonkwo emerged, Winona felt something in her chest loosen. The therapist was in her late 40s, wearing a vibrant Ankara print dress, her locks pulled back elegantly. She had the kind of face that had clearly seen suffering and chosen compassion anyway. "Winona? Come on in." The office itself felt safe. A comfortable couch, warm lighting, a small water fountain in the corner providing gentle background sound. Plants everywhere, thriving ones, well tended. "Tell me what brings you here," Dr. Okonkwo said once they'd settled. Winona had prepared a neat summary, the relationship, the ultimatum, the breakup. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "I feel like I'm supposed to be grateful he even wanted me." Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward slightly. "Say more about that," and it poured out. The relief when Dex had shown interest at that gala. The surprise that someone successful and wealthy would choose her. The nagging voice that said she should overlook the red flags, because opportunities like this didn't come around often for women who looked like her, who came from where she came from. "I kept telling myself I was being too sensitive," Winona said. "That I should be thankful instead of critical." Grateful for what, exactly? Dr. Okonkwo, for being disrespected, for having your boundaries violated, for being asked to diminish yourself. No, but he was offering me a life most people dream about. Was he offering, or was he demanding you pay for it with pieces of yourself? The question landed hard. Winona felt tears spring to her eyes. Dr. Okonkwo handed her the tissue box and waited. She didn't rush to fill the silence or make it comfortable. She just held space. "There's something I want you to understand," Dr. Okonkwo said gently. "As black women, we're often taught we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. That narrative shapes everything, our careers, our relationships, our sense of self-worth. We accept less because we think we should be grateful someone successful wants us. But Winona, that's not truth. That's trauma." The words hit like a key turning in a lock. We carry the weight of generations who had to settle, who had to survive by accepting whatever was offered. Our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, they did what they had to do. But you don't have to keep carrying that survival strategy. You're allowed to thrive, not just survive. You're allowed to demand full partnership, full respect, full love. Winona was crying now, really crying. Not delicate tears, but gut, deep sobs that shook her whole body. "I left my community," she choked out between breaths. "My business, my family, everything I built. For a man who gave his ex-girlfriend a key to our apartment, you left those things because you believed you were building something with a partner. That's not foolish. That's hope. That's love. The problem wasn't your investment, it was his failure to match it." They sat with that for a long moment, Winona crying and Dr. Okonkwo bearing witness. "Here's what I want you to hear," the therapist said. "You're not here because you failed at that relationship. You're here because you succeeded at something much harder. You saved yourself, you recognized the situation, you set a boundary, and you left. Do you know how many women can't do that? Spend decades in relationships that diminish them because the cost of leaving feels too high. It felt impossible," Winona admitted. "But you did it anyway. That's strength, not weakness." Over the following weeks, therapy became Winona's anchor. Dr. Okonkwo gave her homework that felt revolutionary in its simplicity. "I want you to write your non-negotiables," she said during their third session. "Not what you think you should want, not what sounds reasonable or accommodating, what you actually need from a partner, from a relationship, from a life." Winona spent an entire evening on it, sitting at her kitchen table with a journal, writing and crossing out and writing again. The list that emerged was clear: my non-negotiables. A partner who celebrates my work, not treats it as a hobby. Someone who makes decisions with me, not for me. Respect for my boundaries, without having to justify them. Integration with my family and community, not isolation from them. Being seen and valued for who I am, not who I can become. Mutual sacrifice, not one-sided compromise, and freedom to be authentically myself. Hair, opinions, all of it. A love that adds to me, never subtracts. Looking at the list, Winona realized how many of these she'd violated by staying with Dex. How she'd convinced herself that compromise meant accepting things that fundamentally opposed her values. "This is good," Dr. Okonkwo said when Winona shared it. Now, I want you to put it somewhere you'll see it every day. These aren't aspirations. These are requirements. Therapy also opened up space for Winona to reconnect with her creativity. For months, her design work had felt mechanical, completing tasks, meeting requirements, checking boxes. The joy had leaked out of it. When did you fall in love with design? Dr. Okonkwo. Winona thought back to high school, creating a logo for her father's barbershop just because she wanted to. The way colors and shapes could tell stories. The satisfaction of capturing something's essence visually. It was play, she said. It was fun. When's the last time your work felt like play? Winona couldn't remember. That night, she opened her laptop, not for client work, but for herself. She designed for 2 hours straight, creating a series of graphics exploring Black womanhood, the weight, the strength, the joy, the complexity. She used bold colors and flowing lines, mixed traditional African patterns with modern aesthetics. It felt like breathing after being underwater. She posted one design on her Instagram, a black woman's silhouette filled with stars. The caption simply, "Becoming." The response was immediate. People she didn't know, commenting, sharing, saying it spoke to them. "This is what I've been missing," Winona told Dr. Okonkwo at their next session. "Creating from my truth, instead of trying to fit into someone else's vision." "Your truth is your power," Dr. Okonkwo replied. "When you create from that place, people feel it. They recognize authenticity. Week by week, Winona felt herself coming back to life. The dimness her mother had noticed was fading. Color was returning, not just in her work, but in her spirit. In one particularly powerful session, Dr. Okonkwo asked, "What would you say to the Winona who walked into Dex's penthouse that first night, if you could go back?" Winona closed her eyes, thinking, "I'd tell her she's enough, exactly as she is, that she doesn't have to change or shrink or perform, that the right person will love her for being wholly herself, not for being who they need her to be." Can you say that to yourself now, to the Winona sitting here today? Winona opened her eyes, meeting Dr. Okonkwo's steady gaze. "I'm enough. Exactly as I am. Again, I'm enough. I don't have to shrink or perform. Again, like you believe it. I'm enough." The words came out fierce, certain. "I'm whole. I'm worthy. Exactly as I am." Dr. Okonkwo smiled. There she is, the woman who walked away from a billionaire because she knew her worth. Don't ever forget her. Winona wouldn't. She was finally finding her way back home to herself, and this time, she was staying. The Brooklyn Black Women Entrepreneurs Collective met every other Wednesday at Restoration Roasters. Winona found out about it from a flyer in the coffee shop window and showed up to the next meeting, nervous but hopeful. 12 women sat around pushed-together tables ranging from early 20s to mid-60s. A photographer, a bakery owner, a woman who made natural hair care products, a life coach, a real estate agent, a software developer, a woman who ran an Etsy shop selling custom jewelry. The facilitator, a woman named Keisha who owned a marketing firm, welcomed Winona warmly. "We do introductions at the beginning. Name, business, and one win from the past 2 weeks. Doesn't have to be big. We celebrate everything here." When it came to Winona's turn, she said, "I'm Winona. I run Prescott Creative Studios, graphic design and branding, and my win is I'm rebuilding after a major life change." "That's a big win," Keisha said firmly. "Rebuilding takes courage." Welcome. The meeting covered practical topics, tax strategies, client management, social media marketing. But what struck Winona most was the sharing. Women talked openly about their struggles, about clients who didn't want to pay, about family members who didn't take their businesses seriously, about the specific challenges of being black women in entrepreneurship. "I had a potential client tell me my rates were too high," the photographer, Aisha, said. "Then I saw she hired a white photographer for double what I was charging." Heads nodded around the table. They all had stories like this. "We're constantly navigating people's perceptions," the real estate agent, Monica, added. "Too aggressive or not assertive enough. too expensive or not premium enough. It's exhausting. After the official meeting ended, several women stayed to chat. Winona found herself talking to three of them: Keisha, Aisha, and a woman named Simone who ran a career coaching business. "So, what was the major life change?" Simone asked gently. "If you want to share," Winona surprised herself by telling them the whole story: Dex, the ultimatum, walking away, the sabotage, the rebuilding. She expected judgment or pity. Instead, she got recognition. "Girl, I was engaged to a doctor who wanted me to quit my business," Simone said. "Told me it was cute but not sustainable. That I should focus on being a good wife." "What did you do?" Winona asked. "Gave back the ring and doubled down on my business." That was 8 years ago. Best decision I ever made. Aisha shared her own story of leaving a relationship where she'd been made to feel she was asking for too much by wanting basic respect. Monica talked about an ex who'd tried to sabotage her real estate career when she left him. "This is the part they don't tell you," Keisha said. "That sometimes choosing yourself means walking away from what looks good to everyone else. That people will call you difficult or ungrateful or too much. But you know what? We're not too much. We're exactly enough. The world just isn't used to black women having boundaries." Winona felt seen in a way she hadn't since leaving Portland. These women understood not just the business struggles but the particular intersection of being black, female, and refusing to settle. Over the following weeks, the collective became her community. They celebrated when Winona landed a new client, a black-owned wellness center that wanted a complete rebrand. They brainstormed with her when she struggled with pricing. They shared resources and connections. But more than the professional support was the laughter, the inside jokes, the group chat that stayed active all week with memes and encouragement, and closed my first six-figure deal, announcements that everyone celebrated. For the first time in months, Winona felt like she belonged somewhere, not because she'd made herself small enough to fit, but because she was welcomed exactly as she was. Her business started thriving. The work she'd done in therapy, reconnecting with her authentic voice, translated into her designs. Clients could feel the difference. Her portfolio filled with work she was genuinely proud of, brands that told stories, that honored culture, that served communities. One evening at Restoration Roasters, Simone raised her cup of coffee. "I want to toast Winona. 3 months ago, you walked in here rebuilding. Look at you now, fully booked, creating beautiful work, glowing." The other women raised their cups. "To Winona," Keisha added. "And to all of us who chose ourselves." "To choosing ourselves," they echoed. Winona felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. Joy tears, belonging tears. This story gets even better, and I don't want you to miss what happens next. Make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Roman's Story Vault and hit that notification bell. Because Winona's journey is about to come full circle in a way that'll remind you why boundaries matter, why choosing yourself is never selfish, and why the right love is worth waiting for. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. A friend who's settling, a sister who's forgotten her worth, someone who needs permission to say okay to their own liberation. Your share might change someone's life. That night, walking back to her apartment through Brooklyn streets alive with evening energy, Winona realized she was happy. Not the performance of happiness she'd maintained with Dex, but genuine contentment. She'd found her people. She'd found her voice. She was building a life and a business that honored who she actually was. And the most surprising part, she wasn't looking for a relationship, wasn't scanning rooms for potential partners, wasn't online dating or letting people set her up. For the first time in her adult life, Winona was complete on her own, which, of course, is exactly when love would find her. The Women in Business Leadership Conference was held at a hotel in Midtown. In late May, 4 months after Winona had walked out of Dex's penthouse, Keisha had gotten discount tickets for the collective, and 6 of them attended together. Winona was genuinely enjoying herself. The speakers were excellent. The networking was productive. During a break, she was in line for coffee when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Winona?" She turned. Margot Whitfield stood there. perfectly styled as always in a cream pantsuit, her expression uncertain. Winona's first instinct was to walk away, but something made her stay. "Margot, can we talk?" Margot asked. "Just for a minute." "Please." Against her better judgment, Winona agreed. They found a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the conference crowds. Margot spoke first, her words coming quickly like she'd rehearsed them. "I need you to know something. Dex told people you left because you couldn't handle his lifestyle, that you were insecure and jealous. But I heard the truth, about the ultimatum, about what he said to you." Winona waited, saying nothing. "What you did took courage I didn't have for 6 years." Margot's voice cracked slightly. "I stayed with him through so much. He'd dismiss my concerns, gaslight me, make me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting basic respect. I finally left, and even then, I thought maybe the problem was me." "Why are you telling me this?" Winona asked. "Because after I heard what happened with you, I declined the partnership." Winona's eyes widened. "You did?" "I told him I wouldn't be part of how he treats women, that using me as a weapon against you was manipulative and wrong." Margot's eyes were honest, vulnerable. "He was furious, called me emotional and unprofessional, but I didn't care anymore. You're okay, gave me permission to have my own." They stood there for a moment, two women who'd been pitted against each other, recognizing their shared experience. "I'm sorry," Margot said, "for accepting the partnership in the first place, for letting him use me that way. I should have considered what it would do to you." Winona took a breath, processing. She'd spent months seeing Margot as the enemy, the threat, the other woman. But Margot was just another person trying to navigate Dex's manipulation. "Thank you for telling me," Winona said finally. "And for stepping back. You deserved better than how he treated you." "We both did." Margot paused. "I've been following your work, actually. The rebrand you did for that wellness center? It's stunning. You're really talented. Thank you. I mean it. You're building something real, something that matters. I'm glad you got out before he could take that from you." Margot's smile was sad, but genuine. "Take care of yourself, Winona." "You too, Margot." After Margot walked away, Winona stood in that hotel lobby feeling something shift. Her okay hadn't just saved her. It had rippled outward. It had given another woman permission to set boundaries, to walk away, to choose herself. Keisha found her a few minutes later. "You good? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost, just a reminder that boundary setting isn't just personal, it's political." "Say more." "When we refuse to accept less than we deserve, we're not just saving ourselves. We're showing other women what's possible. We're breaking patterns. We're creating new standards." Keisha nodded slowly. "That's real. Every time one of us stands up, we make it easier for the next woman to stand up." Winona thought about the generations of women in her family who'd refused to settle. Her grandmother's backbone, her mother's wisdom, and now her, carrying that legacy forward and passing it on. "My grandmother used to say we're Prescott women," Winona said, "that we don't beg for respect. I forgot that for a while, but I remember now. And you're reminding others," Keisha said. "That's powerful." Walking back into the conference, Winona felt the weight of it. Her story wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever doubted herself, who'd accepted less, who'd been told she was asking for too much. Saying okay to the wedding being off had been the beginning, but the real transformation was understanding that her choice had meaning beyond herself. It was permission, it was precedent, it was possibility, and somewhere another woman was watching and learning and gathering the courage to say her own. Okay, that was worth more than any ring, any penthouse, any billion-dollar lifestyle. That was legacy. 6 months after walking out of Dex's penthouse, Winona stepped off a plane at Portland International Airport and felt something in her chest expand. The air was different here, softer somehow, carrying the scent of rain even when it wasn't falling. The Pacific Northwest had a particular quality of light, gentler than New York's harsh brilliance, filtered through clouds and evergreens. "This is home," Winona whispered to herself, standing in the terminal. "This is me." She was back for Lydia's wedding, her best friend since college finally marrying her partner of 5 years. Winona had taken a full week off, her first real break since starting to rebuild her business. Brooklyn had become comfortable, even beloved, but Portland was in her bones. Her father picked her up, pulling her into a bear hug that lasted a full minute. "Look at you," Marcus said, holding her at arm's length. "You got your light back, baby girl." "I do, Daddy. I really do." Driving through the city, Winona felt herself settling. They passed familiar landmarks, Powell's books, the bridges spanning the Willamette River, neighborhoods she'd known her whole life. Everything looked the same but felt different because she was different. The next morning, she walked to her father's barber shop. Saturday morning, so it would be busy, the shop full of men getting cleaned up for the weekend, the dominoes game going in the back, that particular energy of community and conversation. When she walked in, her father was mid-cut, but he looked up and smiled. "Fellas, my daughter's here," a chorus of greetings. Mr. Jenkins, still getting his Friday, now Saturday, cut. Young men she'd watched grow up, now with jobs and families. The smell of aftershave and the sound of clippers, the barbershop pole outside spinning its eternal red and white. Winona sat on the bench by the window, exactly where she'd sat as a child, and felt tears prick her eyes. She'd abandoned this, not just physically by moving to New York, but spiritually. She'd let Dex's world convince her that this, her community, her roots, her people, wasn't sophisticated enough, wasn't important enough. How had she let that happen? "You all right, Winona?" Mr. Jenkins asked, noticing her expression. "I am," she said, just realizing how much I missed this place. "It missed you too," her father said quietly. That afternoon, she drove through northeast Portland, past her elementary school and the park where she'd learned to ride a bike. She stopped at the community center she'd designed the logo for years ago. It was still there on the sign, her work marking this place. She had coffee with her mother at their favorite cafe, the one that had been there for 20 years, where the owner knew their orders by heart. "You thinking about moving back?" Diane asked, reading her daughter's face. "I don't know," Winona admitted. "My business is doing well in New York. I've built community there, but being here, I remember who I am here. You can remember who you are anywhere, baby. You just have to choose not to forget." That night, at Sunday dinner at her grandmother's house, Grandma Lorraine still hosting at 83, still making pot roast and greens and cornbread, Winona looked around the table. Her parents, her aunt and uncle, her cousins, the family that had anchored her through everything. "I want to say something," Winona announced. "I want to thank you all for not saying 'I told you so' about Dex, for just loving me through it. Baby, we've all made mistakes in love," her grandmother said. "The measure isn't whether you stumble, it's whether you get back up, and you got up stronger." After dinner, Winona sat on the porch with her grandmother, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. "You figuring out what you want?" Grandma Lorraine asked. "I think so. I want meaningful work, real community, love that doesn't require me to shrink, a life that feels like mine." "That's not too much to ask," her grandmother said firmly. "That's exactly what you should demand. I know that now." "Good." Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "Now you just have to stay knowing it, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise." Winona squeezed back, feeling the strength in those 83-year-old fingers. Strength that had survived decades of challenges. Strength she carried in her own DNA. She'd left Portland thinking she was moving towards something better. But better wasn't about location or luxury. Better was about authenticity, about being rooted in who you actually are, instead of who someone else needs you to be. New York had taught her that. The hard way, but taught her nonetheless. Now, sitting on her grandmother's porch in the Oregon evening, Winona felt clear about what she wanted, about what she wouldn't accept, about who she was. She was ready. For what? She didn't know yet. But ready. Lydia's wedding was everything Winona had hoped for. Intimate, joyful, deeply personal. 50 guests at a small venue in the Columbia River Gorge, surrounded by waterfalls and evergreens. Lydia looked radiant in a simple dress, her partner crying happy tears during the vows. Winona stood as maid of honor, holding the bouquet and genuinely celebrating. Love for the first time since her own engagement had ended. No bitterness, no cynicism, just pure happiness for her friend. At the reception, Lydia grabbed her arm with the particular intensity of a slightly tipsy bride. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said, pulling Winona across the room. "My cousin Elliot. He just moved back from doing water projects in East Africa. You two will either fall in love or argue about design philosophy all night." "Lydia, I'm not looking for..." But then she saw him. Elliot Reeves stood by the bar, tall and broad-shouldered with deep brown skin and close-cropped hair. He wore a navy suit that fit him perfectly, no tie, top button undone. When he smiled at something the bartender said, his entire face transformed, genuine warmth radiating from him. Winona felt something flutter in her chest. She immediately distrusted it. "Elliot," Lydia called, "come meet my best friend." He turned, and when his eyes met Winona's, she felt the impact of his attention. Direct eye contact. Present, not scanning the room or checking his phone. Just fully there. "Winona Prescott," Lydia said with ceremony. "This is my cousin Elliot Reeves. Elliot, this is the woman I've been telling you about." He extended his hand, his smile widening. "The woman who walked away from a billionaire because he didn't respect your boundaries. Lydia's been sharing your story. That's powerful." Winona took his hand, warm, firm, present. "She talks too much. She talks just enough." His eyes held humor and something else. Respect, interest. "Dance with me?" It wasn't really a question, but it wasn't a demand either. An invitation. Winona found herself nodding. On the dance floor, the DJ was playing older R&B, Anita Baker's Sweet Love, slow and soulful. Elliot's hand settled on her lower back, respectful but present. Not too high, not too low, just right. They moved together easily. Unlike Dex, who'd always led forcefully, treating dancing like a competition he needed to win, Elliot moved with her, responding to her rhythm instead of imposing his own. "So, you do water projects?" Winona asked, needing to fill the silence that felt too charged. "Environmental engineering. I spent the last 3 years in Tanzania and Kenya, helping communities build sustainable water systems." His face lit up when he talked about it, the same way hers did when she talked about design. Clean water changes everything. Health outcomes, education access, economic opportunity. "But I moved back to start a consulting firm here. Same work, closer to family. That's beautiful work," says the woman who designs brands for Black-owned businesses and non-profits. He spun her gently, bringing her back in. "Yeah, I looked you up. Your portfolio is incredible. That logo you did for the youth center, it tells a whole story." Winona's breath caught. Dex had never once looked at her portfolio. Not really. He'd glanced at it early on, made vague compliments, but never engaged with the actual work. "You researched my work?" she asked. "Lydia mentioned your name weeks ago. I was curious." He met her eyes. "I like to know who I'm meeting, especially when my cousin speaks about someone with that much admiration." The song shifted to Luther Vandross, Here and Now, and they kept dancing. Other couples filled the floor, but Winona was only aware of Elliot. The warmth of his hand, the way he smelled like cedar and something citrus, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "Can I be honest?" he asked. "Please, I haven't been able to stop watching you all night." The way you stood up there during the ceremony, genuinely happy for Lydia. The way you talked to people, actually listening instead of waiting for your turn to speak. "You're refreshing." Winona felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I don't know about that." "I do." His voice was certain but gentle. "I've been to enough events where everyone's performing. You're not performing, you're just being. It's rare." The song ended, but neither of them moved to leave the dance floor. The opening notes of Maxwell's Fortunate began, and Elliot raised an eyebrow in question. Winona nodded. "Tell me about the water projects," she said as they continued swaying. His face lit up again. He told her about villages that had been walking 3 hours daily for water, about the first time a new well came online and children could go to school instead of fetching water, about training local teams to maintain systems so communities remained self-sufficient. "I'm not saving the world," he said, "but I like to think I'm creating opportunities for people to save themselves." Winona understood that philosophy. It was how she approached her design work, not doing for communities, but with them. When the song ended, they finally left the dance floor. But instead of parting ways, Elliot asked, "Want to get some air?" Outside, the Oregon night was cool and clear. Stars scattered across the sky in a way they never did in New York. They found a bench overlooking the gorge, the sound of waterfalls distant but present. "So," Elliot said, "Lydia mentioned you live in New York now." "Brooklyn. I moved there after the relationship ended." "But you're from Portland?" "Born and raised. Northeast Portland. You?" "Military family. We moved every 2 to 3 years. Germany, North Carolina, Texas, California. Never really felt settled anywhere until college. Went to Howard, studied engineering, found my passion for water systems there." They talked easily, the conversation flowing without effort. He asked questions that showed he was listening, following up on things she'd said earlier, making connections, genuinely curious. When Winona mentioned missing Portland, Elliot said, "You thinking about moving back?" "Maybe. My business is remote. I can work from anywhere, but I've built community in Brooklyn too. It's complicated. The best decisions usually are." He looked at her thoughtfully. "But if you could choose based purely on where you feel most yourself, where would that be?" "Here," she answered immediately, then paused. That was fast. That was honest. He smiled. "That's different." The reception continued inside, laughter and music drifting through open doors. But out here, under Oregon stars, Winona felt something shifting. This man, this moment, this ease of connection. It scared her. It also felt right. After an hour outside, they returned to the reception. But instead of mingling, they found an empty table in the corner and kept talking. The table still had centerpieces, wildflowers in mason jars, very Lydia, and half-finished glasses of wine from earlier guests. The DJ played a mix of old school and contemporary hits. People laughed and danced and celebrated. But in their corner, Winona and Elliot created their own world. "Tell me about Tanzania," Winona said, genuinely wanting to know. Elliot's eyes brightened. He told her about living in a village outside Mwanza, learning Swahili, being adopted by a local family who fed him ugali and taught him their customs, about the challenges of implementing Western engineering solutions in communities with different needs and resources. "I had to unlearn everything I thought I knew," he admitted. "Stop being the American coming to fix things and start being a partner listening to what people actually needed. Hardest and best education of my life." "That's humility," Winona observed. "Most people can't do that. I had good teachers, and I got my ego checked regularly." He laughed. "Nothing humbles you faster than village elders gently explaining why your brilliant plan won't work." They talked about work, about purpose, about the satisfaction of doing something that mattered. Elliot understood what drove Winona, the need to use her skills in service of community, not just profit. "Why'd you come back?" she asked. If the work was so meaningful there, his expression shifted, something heavier settling over his features. "My dad passed away last year, cancer. I was in Kenya when it happened. Made it back in time to say goodbye, but barely. It made me realize I can do this work from anywhere, but I only have one family. I'm sorry about your father." "Thank you." He took a breath. He was Air Force, career military. Taught me discipline, service, integrity. When I told him I wanted to do international development work, he got it immediately. Said, "Son, find work that matters and do it with honor." Best advice he ever gave me. Winona felt the weight of that loss, the way it had reshaped Elliot's priorities. She understood that kind of reckoning, when life forces you to clarify what actually matters. "Can I ask you something personal?" Elliot said. "Sure." Lydia mentioned you were engaged, that the relationship ended because he gave you an ultimatum about boundaries, but she didn't share details. You don't have to tell me, but I'm curious what kind of man lets someone like you walk away. Winona considered how much to share, but something about Elliot's directness, his genuine interest, made her want to be honest. She told him the story, not all of it, but the essentials, the compromises, Margot, the ultimatum, her okay. Elliot listened without interrupting, his full attention on her. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. That took tremendous courage, he said finally. Most people stay in situations that diminish them because leaving feels impossible. You chose yourself. It didn't feel courageous at the time. It felt terrifying. Courage usually does. He leaned forward slightly. Can I share something? I was engaged too. 3 years ago, before I went to East Africa, what happened? She gave me an ultimatum, her or my obsession with saving the world. She said I had to choose a normal life with her in the States or chasing water projects on another continent. She wouldn't wait. What did you do? I chose the work. Pain flickered across his face, and I felt guilty about it for 2 years. Thought maybe I was selfish, that maybe she was right. I was choosing strangers over someone who loved me. Winona shook her head firmly. You weren't selfish. You were choosing your purpose. The right person wouldn't make you pick. Exactly. His eyes held hers. The right person celebrates your purpose and wants to build alongside you, not compete with it. Took me a long time to understand that. Me too, Winona admitted. I kept thinking I should be grateful Dex wanted me, that I was asking too much by wanting partnership instead of permission. You weren't asking too much. You were asking for the bare minimum. He said it with such certainty that Winona felt something loosen in her chest. They sat with that for a moment. Two people who'd walked away from relationships that looked good on paper, but were slowly destroying them from the inside. The reception was winding down. Lydia and her partner were saying goodbyes to early departures. The DJ had shifted to slower songs. The energy was mellowing. Walk with me? Elliot asked. They left the venue and walked a short trail that led to a viewpoint overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. The moon hung low and full, reflecting off the water. Oregon spread out before them in shades of silver and shadow. I know you just got out of something heavy, Elliot said, standing beside her at the railing. I'm not trying to rush anything or make you uncomfortable, but I'd really like to get to know you, Winona, at whatever pace feels right for you. She appreciated that more than he knew. No pressure, no expectations, just honest interest and respect for her timeline. I'd like that too, she said. Can I have your number? She recited it, watching him type it into his phone. He called it immediately so she'd have his. I'm in Portland for another week, he said. Would you want to have coffee before you go back to New York? Just talking. Getting to know each other. I'd like that, Winona repeated. He smiled, that transformative smile that lit up his whole face. Good, because I have a feeling you're someone worth knowing. Under Oregon stars, standing next to a man who saw her strength instead of her trauma, who respected her boundaries instead of pushing them, who seemed genuinely interested in who she was rather than who she could become. Winona felt hope bloom in her chest, not the desperate hope of someone looking to be saved, but the quiet hope of someone who's saved herself and is ready to build something real with someone else. Maybe, possibly, if this feeling was real, time would tell. But for now, standing there with Elliot in the place she'd always called home, Winona was open to the possibility, and that was enough. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a hike in Forest Park. A hike turned into exploring Powell's books for 3 hours, both of them leaving with bags full of novels and poetry. By the time Winona flew back to New York, she and Elliot had spent nearly every day of her remaining week together, but they'd taken it slow. No physical intimacy beyond a hug goodbye at the airport, just conversation and connection. I don't want to rush this, Elliot had said on their last night in Portland. I like you, Winona, a lot, but I want to do this right. Back in Brooklyn, Winona found herself smiling at random moments, thinking about something Elliot had said. replaying conversations, feeling giddy in a way she hadn't since she was a teenager. But this felt different from her early days with Dex. That had been intoxicating but destabilizing. This felt grounding, like something being built on solid foundation instead of shifting sand. They started video calling every night, not because they'd made a rule about it, but because they both wanted to. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 3, talking about their days, their work, their dreams. Elliot would show her his designs for water filtration systems, explaining the engineering with the same passion she brought to color theory. She'd show him logo concepts in progress, and he'd ask thoughtful questions about her choices. Why that particular shade of blue? He asked one night. Because the non-profit serves coastal communities. I wanted to evoke ocean without being literal about it. That's brilliant. The way you think about symbolism and emotion in design, it's like poetry. Winona felt seen in a way that went beyond attraction. Elliot was interested in her mind, her process, her purpose. They talked about everything. His experience growing up in a military family, never staying anywhere long enough to feel rooted. Her experience being deeply rooted, but sometimes feeling trapped by expectations. His relationship with his mother after losing his father. Her relationship with her grandmother, and the wisdom passed down through generations. 3 weeks into their nightly calls, Winona shared something her grandmother used. To say, baby girl, a good man will add to your life, not subtract from it. He'll celebrate who you are, not try to change you into who he needs. I thought Dex was adding, she admitted. The lifestyle, the opportunities. But he was subtracting. My confidence, my identity, my peace. Elliot was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're getting all of that back. I can see it. Every time we talk, you seem more yourself, more comfortable in your own skin. I feel it." She paused. "You make me feel safe to be myself." "Good. Because yourself is exactly who I'm interested in." The difference between Elliot and Dex became clearer every day. Dex had wanted to mold her into the perfect billionaire's wife. Elliot wanted to know the real Winona. The messy parts, the uncertain parts, the parts still healing. When she told him about therapy with Dr. Okonkwo, he didn't dismiss it or make her feel weak. He celebrated it. "That's brave work," he said. "Facing your patterns, understanding your trauma. Most people avoid that their whole lives." When she shared that she was considering moving back to Portland, he didn't pressure her one way or another. "Where do you feel most yourself?" he asked. That's what Dr. Okonkwo asked. Smart woman. "What was your answer?" "Portland. But I've built community in Brooklyn too. I don't want to abandon what I've created there. So don't abandon it. Take it with you if you move, or split time, or stay in New York. Whatever feels right for you, I support it." That was the difference. Dex had expected her to rearrange her life around his needs. Elliot supported her in figuring out what she needed. "Can I be honest about something?" Winona asked one night, 3 months into their long-distance connection. "Always. This scares me. How easy this feels. How right." "After Dex, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to show me who you really are, and it's someone different from who you're presenting." Elliot's expression was serious. "That fear makes sense given what you've been through. All I can tell you is, this is who I am. What you see is what you get. I'm not performing or trying to win you. I'm just being myself and hoping that's enough." "It's more than enough," Winona whispered. "That's what scares me." "Want to know what scares me?" "What?" "That I'm falling for you through a screen. That I want to be in the same city as you, see you in person, build a real life together. But I don't want to rush you or pressure you, or make you feel like you have to choose between your healing and a relationship." Winona felt her heart expand. "You're falling for me?" "Completely. Is that okay to say?" "It's more than okay." They sat with that admission for a moment, both smiling at their screens like teenagers. "So what do we do?" Winona asked. "How do we make this work?" "We keep doing what we're doing, building slowly, being intentional. And when you're ready, whether that's in 3 months or a year, we figure out how to be in the same place." "What if I'm ready now?" The words came out before Winona could stop them. What if I want to move back to Portland? Not for you, but for me, because that's where I feel most rooted. And you being there is a beautiful bonus? Elliot's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. Then I'd say, welcome home. That night, after they hung up, Winona sat in her Brooklyn apartment and made a decision. She was going home to Portland, to her family, her community, her roots, to the place where she'd always known who she was, even when she'd temporarily forgotten. And she was going to see where this thing with Elliot led, not because she needed him, but because she wanted him. Because he added to her life instead of subtracting from it. Because being with him felt like being more herself, not less. For the first time since walking away from Dex, Winona was building towards something instead of away from something. And it felt exactly right. 2 weeks after deciding to move back to Portland, Winona received a text from Elliot. Can I fly out this weekend? I want to see you, in person. Her stomach flipped. 3 months of video calls, late-night conversations, building something real through screens. But this would be different. This would be physical presence, actual proximity, the test of whether what they'd built digitally translated to reality. Yes, she texted back. Please. Friday evening, Winona cleaned her apartment 3 times, changed her outfit 4 times, and paced her small living room like a caged animal. She'd faced down a billionaire, rebuilt her business, started therapy, moved across the country, but the thought of opening her door to Elliot made her hands shake. When the knock finally came, she took a deep breath and opened it. Elliot stood in her doorway, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, wearing jeans and a simple Henley shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. When he saw her, his face broke into that transformative smile. Even more beautiful in person, he said softly. Winona felt heat rise in her cheeks. You're pretty easy on the eyes yourself. He stepped inside, setting down his bag, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. All those hours of talking, and suddenly neither knew what to say. Then Elliot opened his arms. Can the first hug you? She stepped into his embrace, and it felt like coming home. He was solid and warm, his arms wrapping around her completely. She breathed in the scent of him, cedar and citrus, just like she remembered from the wedding, and felt her nervousness settle. Hi, he murmured against her hair. Hi. They pulled back just enough to see each other's faces, both grinning like fools. So, Winona said, welcome to Brooklyn. That weekend became one of those perfect bubbles of time that feels suspended from normal life. Winona showed Elliot her neighborhood, taking pride in the community she'd found. They had breakfast at Restoration Roasters, where the barista greeted her by name and gave Elliot an approving nod. They explored Brooklyn together, Elliot insisting on supporting black-owned businesses everywhere they went. Lunch at a soul food restaurant in Crown Heights where the mac and cheese made him close his eyes in appreciation. Coffee at a cafe in Fort Greene, owned by a Haitian family. Browsing a record store in Bed-Stuy, where the owner played vintage Motown. This is what I love about what you've built here, Elliot said as they walked. You didn't just move to New York. You found your people, created community. That matters. Saturday afternoon, they wandered into a black-owned bookstore in Clinton Hill. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with works by black authors. A children's section bursting with books featuring brown faces. A reading nook where people sat absorbed in their choices. Winona was browsing the poetry section when Elliot appeared beside her with a book. Nikki Giovanni, he said, holding up a collection. You quoted her on our 5th phone call. We love because it's the only true adventure. I've been meaning to read more of her work. Winona stared at him. You remembered that? I pay attention, Win. Everything you say matters to me. He bought the poetry collection, along with 2 books on environmental justice and a novel Winona had mentioned wanting to read. At the register, the owner, an older black woman with silver locks, smiled at them warmly. Y'all are sweet together, she said. Got that new love glow. Walking back to Winona's apartment as the sun set, Brooklyn coming alive with evening energy, Elliot reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, and neither let go until they reached her building. Inside her apartment, Winona made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. while Elliot sat at her small kitchen table, telling her about a new water project proposal in Haiti. She loved watching him talk about his work, the way his hands moved when he was explaining technical concepts, the passion that lit him from within. After dinner, they settled on her couch with glasses of wine. Music played softly from her speaker. Day because it felt right. The city hummed outside her window. Candles flickered on the coffee table, casting warm light. They were sitting close, thighs touching, Winona's head on Elliot's shoulder. Comfortable silence wrapped around them. "Can I be honest?" Elliot asked, his voice lower than usual. "Always. I've been trying really hard to be a gentleman and take this slow, but I really want to kiss you right now." Winona's pulse quickened. She lifted her head to look at him. "What's stopping you?" His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with a tenderness that made her breath catch. "Just wanted to make sure you wanted it too." "I do," she whispered. The kiss started soft, a question asked and answered. His lips were warm, gentle, exploring. Winona's hand came up to the back of his neck, fingers threading through his hair, and the kiss deepened. This was nothing like kissing Dex. That had been performative, aggressive, about conquest. This was conversation, give and take. Elliot kissed like he listened, with full attention, responding to her cues, making her feel cherished rather than claimed. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elliot pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm falling for you, Winona Prescott." "Hard, good," she breathed, "because I'm already there." They kissed again, and this time there was urgency beneath the tenderness. Winona's hands found the hem of his shirt. Elliot pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "You sure?" "Completely." What followed was everything the word making love should mean. Elliot was attentive and present, asking what she liked, paying attention to her responses. He took his time, worshipping her body with his hands and mouth, making her feel seen and desired and treasured. When they finally came together, it felt like homecoming. Two whole people, choosing to be vulnerable, giving and receiving in perfect balance. Nothing transactional, nothing performative. Just two people connecting on every level. Afterward, lying in her bed with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady. Beneath her ear, Winona felt peace she'd never experienced with another person. "This is what it's supposed to feel like," she murmured. "What?" "Love. Safe and exciting at the same time. Like I can be completely myself and completely vulnerable. And that's not just okay, it's celebrated." Elliot kissed the top of her head. "That's exactly what it's supposed to feel like. For both of us." They stayed awake, talking until 3 in the morning, wrapped in each other, sharing stories and dreams and fears. When Winona finally fell asleep, it was with a smile on her face and certainty in her heart. This was different. This was real. This was right. 9 months after that first Brooklyn weekend, Winona and Elliot had fallen into a rhythm. They flew back and forth every other week, she to Portland, he to New York. Video calls every night without fail, supporting each other's work, celebrating victories, providing comfort during challenges. But the distance was getting harder. One evening in early spring, during their nightly call, Elliot's expression was serious. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous," Winona teased, but her stomach tightened. "I'm serious, Win. This back and forth, I know we said we'd do it for a year and then reassess, but I don't want to wait. I want to be with you. Really be with you. Not just on weekends and video calls." Winona's heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm willing to move to New York. My consulting firm is flexible. I can work from anywhere, and if you're not ready for me to move in with you, that's fine. I'll get my own place. But I want to be in the same city as you. I want to build a life with you." Tears pricked Winona's eyes. "You'd leave Portland? Your family, your home base, everything?" "Home is where you are," he said simply. "My family will still be a plane ride away. But you, I don't want you to be a plane ride away anymore. I want to wake up next to you, come home to you, build something real with you." This was the opposite of Dex. Dex had demanded she uproot her life without discussion, treating her needs as secondary. Elliot was offering to uproot his, but making it clear the decision was still hers. Actually, Winona said slowly, her voice shaking slightly, I've been thinking too. About moving back to Portland. Elliot's eyes widened. Really? My business is completely remote now. I can work from anywhere. And honestly, I miss home. I miss my family, my community, being somewhere that feels like me. She leaned closer to the camera, as if she could touch him through the screen. I was thinking about it before you, but now, the idea of being in the same city as you, building something together in the place where I'm rooted, that sounds perfect. You're serious. Completely. Let me finish up some projects here and find someone to take over my lease. Give me 2 months? Elliot's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. I'll start looking for a place for us, if you want, or we can get separate places if that's too fast. Us? Winona interrupted firmly. I want us. I'm ready for us. Are you sure? We can take our time. Elliot. She waited until he stopped talking. I spent too long in a relationship where I had to shrink myself. With you, I get to be fully myself and still be loved. That's not something I want to wait for. That's something I want to build now. His eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you, Winona. It was the first time either of them had said it explicitly. I love you too, she said, the words feeling both new and ancient. So much. Over the next 2 months, they looked at houses together via video call. Winona wanted something with character, in a neighborhood with diversity and community. Elliot wanted something with good bones and outdoor space for a garden. They found a craftsman bungalow in northeast Portland, the neighborhood where Winona had grown up. It had hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves and a front porch perfect for summer evenings. The backyard was small but sunny, ideal for growing vegetables. This is it, Winona said when they video toured it. This is home. Elliot agreed. When Winona flew back to Portland permanently in June, Elliot picked her up at the airport. She walked out of baggage claim with her life packed in suitcases, and he was there, holding a sign that said, Welcome home, Win. She dropped everything and ran into his arms. I'm home, she said. We're home, he corrected. They moved into the craftsman house together, blending their lives and their belongings. Her design equipment and his engineering books. Her grandmother's quilt and his father's military medals. Her plants and his coffee maker. It wasn't perfect. They had to learn to share space, navigate each other's habits, communicate through disagreements. But it was equal, mutual. Both of them building something together, instead of one person fitting into the other's life. This was partnership, real partnership, and it was everything Winona had ever wanted. Year and a half after walking out of Dex's penthouse, Winona stood backstage at the Women in Business Leadership Conference in Manhattan, about to give her first keynote speech. Her life looked completely different now. She lived in Portland with Elliot in their craftsman house. Her business was thriving. She'd recently hired 2 junior designers and was turning away more work than she could accept. She was happy, genuinely, deeply, fully happy. But first, she had a story to tell. The conference organizer gave her the signal. Winona walked onto the stage, the lights bright, hundreds of faces looking up at her expectantly. A year and a half ago, she began, her voice steady and clear. A billionaire told me to accept his ex-girlfriend's permanent presence in our relationship, or the wedding was off. I said, okay. She paused, letting that land. I said, okay, the wedding's off. And today, I want to talk about what happened next. For 20 minutes, Winona shared her story. The ultimatum, the compromises that had led to that moment, her choice, the rebuilding, the therapy, the healing. She talked about the specific challenges she'd faced as a black woman, the microaggressions, the grateful narrative, the particular weight of navigating relationships while carrying generational trauma. My grandmother used to say that black women have been making miracles out of impossible situations for generations, Winona said, her voice thick with emotion. And that's true, we have, but she also said, and this is the part that saved me, she said we don't have to keep doing the impossible. We're allowed to walk away from what diminishes us. We're allowed to demand what honors us. A woman in the third row was crying openly. Others nodded, recognition clear on their faces. I'm not going to stand here and tell you leaving was easy. It was terrifying. I had no plan, no safety net, no guarantee it would work out. But I had something more important. I had myself back. And that was worth more than any ring, any penthouse, any billion-dollar lifestyle. After the talk, women lined up to speak with her. They shared their own stories, relationships they'd left, boundaries they'd set, courage they were still gathering. Winona hugged them, encouraged them, reminded them of their worth. Near the end of the line stood someone unexpected. Dex. He looked different, humbler somehow, less polished, more human. When he reached her, his expression was genuine. That was powerful, and I'm glad I heard it. Winona waited, unsure what to say. I've been in therapy, he continued. Real therapy, not just going through the motions. Learning a lot about why I was the way I was with you, about control and ego, and how I treated relationships like business deals to win. That's good, Winona said carefully. I hope you find healing. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize, not the manipulation I tried after you left. I was wrong about all of it. The way I dismissed your feelings, the ultimatum, the sabotage afterward. You deserve so much better than how I treated you. That's my loss, and I own that. The apology landed differently than it would have a year ago. Then, it might have felt validating. Now, it felt like closure. I appreciate that, Winona said. Truly, and I hope you find someone who's right for you, someone you can be a real partner to. You look happy, Dex observed. I am. Completely. Good. You deserve that. As Dex walked away, Winona felt the final piece of that chapter close. No anger, no resentment, just completion. That evening, she flew back to Portland. Elliot picked her up from the airport, their tradition now. The moment she saw him, her face broke into a smile. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly right there in the arrivals terminal. How'd it go? He asked when they finally pulled apart. Perfect. I'll tell you everything, but first, take me home. Home. Their home. They drove through Portland as the sun set, the city bathed in golden light. Past her father's barbershop, still thriving. Past the community center with her logo on the sign. Through neighborhoods where she'd grown up, where she now built her life. When they pulled into their driveway, Winona looked at the craftsman house, with its welcoming porch, and knew she was exactly where she belonged. Inside, Elliot had prepared dinner. Nothing fancy, just her favorite pasta and a salad. They ate and talked. Winona sharing stories from the conference, Elliot telling her about his day. Later, curled together on their couch, Elliot said, I have something for you. He handed her a small box. Winona's breath caught. Before you panic, he said quickly, this isn't a proposal. Not yet. I know we're taking our time, and I respect that. But this is a promise. She opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, a band with intricate engraving of intertwined vines. It's a promise that when I do ask you to marry me, it won't come with ultimatums or conditions. It'll be two whole people choosing to build a life together, as equals, as partners. A promise that I will always celebrate you, never diminish you. Tears streamed down Winona's face. Elliot, you don't have to wear it. You don't have to. She kissed him, silencing his words. Put it on me. He slipped the ring onto her right hand, and it fit perfectly. I love you, she whispered. So much. I love you too. All of you. Exactly as you are. Her billionaire fiancé had issued an ultimatum, and she'd replied, okay. And everything had changed. She'd found herself. She'd found her strength. She'd found her voice. And in the process, she'd found love. The kind that didn't require her to diminish but invited her to flourish. The kind that felt like coming home. That night, after Elliot slipped the promise ring onto her finger, they sat together in the quiet of their living room. The candles had burned low. Portland sounds drifted through the open window. Distant laughter, a car passing, the rustle of trees in the evening breeze. Winona held up her hand, watching the candlelight catch in the engraved vines on the ring. "Tell me about the design," she said. Elliot took her hand gently, tracing the pattern with his finger. "See how the vines intertwine, but each maintains its own path? That's us, growing together but never losing ourselves in the process, supporting each other but staying rooted in who we are individually. You designed this?" "I worked with a jeweler in Alberta Arts District. Took me 3 months to get it exactly right. I wanted something that represented real partnership, not possession, not merging into one person, but two whole people choosing each other every day." Winona felt overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, the intention, the respect embedded in every choice he'd made. This man understood what she'd needed to learn the hard way. That love doesn't require you to disappear. They made love again that night, slower this time, tender and unhurried. Elliot touched her like she was precious, like knowing her body was a privilege he didn't take for granted. When she looked into his eyes, she saw herself reflected back, not who he needed her to be, but who she actually was, completely seen, completely valued, completely loved. Afterward, wrapped in their sheets with the Portland night cool against their skin, Elliot said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For being brave enough to walk away from what was wrong so you could find what's right. If you hadn't said okay to Dex, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here." Winona had never thought about it that way. Her okay hadn't just been an ending. It had been a beginning. "I'm glad I'm here," she whispered. "With you. In this house. In this life we're building. Me too, Win. Me too." The next morning, Winona woke to sunlight streaming through their bedroom window and the smell of coffee brewing. She found Elliot in the kitchen making breakfast, wearing sweatpants and nothing else, humming along to the music playing from his phone. He looked up when she entered, and his face lit up in that way that still made her stomach flip. "Morning, beautiful." She walked into his arms and he held her close, swaying slightly to the music. This was her life now. This ordinary, extraordinary, perfect life. No penthouse views or designer clothes or charity galas. Just a craftsman house in northeast Portland. A man who loved her exactly as she was. Work that fulfilled her. Community that sustained her. Everything she'd actually needed, it turned out, had been waiting for her at home all along. She just had to become brave enough to claim it. "What are you thinking about?" Elliot asked, pulling back to see her face. "How far I've come. How different this feels from what I thought I wanted. Better or worse? So much better. Real instead of perfect. Mine instead of borrowed." He kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you. The journey you've been on, the work you've done. You're incredible." Winona believed him. Not because she needed his validation, but because she'd finally learned to see her own worth. She'd done the hard work of reclaiming herself, and now she could receive love from a place of wholeness instead of emptiness. This was what it meant to be home. Not a location, though Portland would always be hers, but the feeling of being at peace in your own skin, of building a life that honors who you are instead of who you think you should be, of loving and being loved without having to shrink or perform or negotiate your basic worth. She was home, finally, fully, completely home. Let's talk about what okay really meant. When Winona said okay to the wedding being off, she wasn't just ending a relationship. She was beginning a revolution in her own life. She was declaring that her boundaries mattered more than someone else's billions, that her peace was worth more than prestige, that she would rather be alone and whole than partnered and diminished. That single word, okay, contained generations of strength. It carried her grandmother's backbone, her mother's wisdom, her father's quiet dignity. It held every black woman who'd ever refused to settle, who'd demanded respect in a world determined to deny it, who'd chosen herself when choosing herself looked like losing everything. Winona's grandmother was right. Black women have been making miracles out of impossible situations for generations. We've survived by accepting less, by being grateful for crumbs, by making do. But we don't have to keep doing the impossible. We're allowed to demand the possible, full partnership, full respect, full love. We're allowed to walk away from what diminishes us and walk toward what honors us. That's not too much to ask. That's exactly what we deserve. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 things right now. Hit that subscribe button for Mr. Roman's Story Vault and turn on notifications so you never miss these powerful stories about people who chose courage over comfort. Then, like this video and drop a comment telling me what your okay moment would be. What are you ready to walk away from? What boundary are you finally ready to set? Your story matters and might be the permission someone else needs. Finally, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. A friend who's compromising too much, a sister who's forgotten her worth, anyone who needs permission to choose themselves. Let Winona's okay ripple outward the way it was meant to. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Winona's story. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in courage, in healing, in the power of choosing yourself. Next week, we have another incredible story for you. One about a woman who discovered her husband's secret family, and what she did next will absolutely shock you. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember this: you're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to demand respect. You're allowed to walk away from what diminishes you and walk toward what honors you. Your okay might be the hardest word you ever speak, but it might also be the one that changes everything. Don't ever forget, you're a miracle. Not because you can endure the impossible, but because you're brave enough to demand the possible. Your worth is inherent. Your voice matters. Your choice to honor yourself is revolutionary. Say you're okay. Change your life. This is Mr. Roman's Story Vault, and we'll see you next time.